The other kids said his nanny was nobody special. Just another Omega who scrubbed floors and changed sheets. They said she couldn't even shift properly. But on the day 7 assassins tried to kill him, 5-year-old Kieran Carroll watched Beverly Hull do the impossible. She flew 20 feet in less than a second. 7 arrows that should have ended a royal bloodline buried themselves in her back instead. And when she died in the dirt covering his body, Kieran saw something the adults missed, had wings, made of violet light. When she came back 3 minutes later with a glowing heart and eyes like amethysts, the pack called it a miracle. They had no idea she'd just activated a curse that would turn 2,000 of them into monsters. Now Kieran's nanny is a queen, his father's mate. The pack's only hope. And the boy who watches her every night drawing the same image over and over knows something no one else does. The wings are still there, waiting. This isn't a fairy tale about a hero. This is a horror story about what love costs. And they have 7 days before the nightmare becomes permanent. The Ironwood Pack territory stretched across the northern mountain range like a sleeping giant. All jagged peaks and dense pine forests that held secrets older than the wolves who prowled them. At the heart of this wilderness stood the Citadel, a fortress carved from black granite that had weathered 3 centuries of storms, wars, and the slow erosion of tradition. Inside those ancient walls, hierarchy was everything. At the very top sat Alpha King Santiago Carroll, a man built like a weapon and just as dangerous. Since the death of his mate 3 years ago in a car accident that still haunted the pack's collective memory, Santiago had transformed from a stern but fair ruler into something colder. His eyes, once warm amber, now held the lifeless quality of a predator who'd forgotten how to feel anything but duty. At the very bottom, though invisible to everyone who mattered, was Beverly Hull. Beverly was 23, an Omega with mousy brown hair she kept tied back in a perpetual bun, and a human form so forgettable that pack members often walked past her twice before realizing she was the same person. She worked in the nursery, changing sheets, scrubbing floors, preparing bottles, and doing the 1,000 small tasks that kept the heart of the pack beating while receiving none of the credit. She had a wolf, technically, a small, sand-colored thing that could barely defend itself against an aggressive house cat. In a pack where strength determined worth, Beverly's wolf made her worthless. But there was one person who didn't see her that way. Kieran, the Alpha King's 5-year-old son. Kieran Carroll was a fragile child, small for his age, with his father's dark hair, but his mother's gentle gray eyes. He hadn't been the same since the night of the accident, though while other pups his age were already showing signs of their future strength, practicing shifts, wrestling with siblings, displaying the aggressive confidence of young alphas. Kieran was quiet. Too quiet. He drew pictures obsessively, spoke in whispers when he spoke at all, and had nightmares that left him screaming for a mother who would never answer. The pack whispered that he was weak, damaged. Some even suggested behind closed doors that Santiago should consider having another heir with a stronger female. A proper heir. To Beverly, Kieran was perfect. She'd been assigned to him 2 years ago, after the 3rd nanny quit, unable to handle the child's episodes. Beverly had walked into his room that first day to find him huddled in a corner, drawing the same image over and over. A car, twisted metal, flames. He'd looked up at her with those huge gray eyes, and something in Beverly's chest had cracked open. "I'm Beverly," she'd said softly, sitting down on the floor across from him, not approaching, giving him space. "But you can call me Bev if you want. I'm here to take care of you." "Everyone leaves," Kieran had whispered. "I won't," Beverly had promised, and she hadn't. Now, 2 years later, she was the only person Kieran truly smiled for. She knew his favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs with cheese cut into tiny squares, a lullaby his mother used to sing, a melody lullaby his mother used to sing, a melody Beverly had learned by asking the older pack members, piecing it together like a puzzle until she got it right. To the rest of the pack, Beverly was the Omega nanny. To Kieran, She was everything. September 14th dawned cold and bright, of the kind of morning where the mountain air tasted like pine needles and possibility. Beverly woke before sunrise, as she always did, in her small room in the servants' wing. She dressed quickly in her usual uniform, plain gray tunic and leggings that marked her as staff, and made her way through the still quiet citadel to Kieran's suite. She found him already awake, sitting on his bed with his sketch pad drawing. "Morning, little wolf," Beverly said softly, using her private nickname for him. Kieran looked up, and his face transformed with a smile that made Beverly's heart squeeze. "Bev, look!" He held up his drawing. It was a picture of the two of them, holding hands, surrounded by what looked like flowers, or stars. With Kieran's art, it was sometimes hard to tell. "That's beautiful," Beverly said, meaning it. "Is that for today?" Today was the autumn gathering, a tradition that dated back to the pack's founding. Once a year, and to be a show of strength, continuity. To be a show of strength, continuity, tradition. Santiago hadn't attended in the 3 years since his mate's death. But this year, the council had pushed. The pack needed to see their king. They needed to see the heir. They needed reassurance that the Ironwood pack was strong. Santiago had finally, be so many people. Beverly sat down on be so many people. Beverly sat down on the bed beside him, not touching. Kieran didn't always like to be touched first thing in the morning, but close enough that he could feel her presence. "I know," she said, "but I'll be right there. I promise. Will you hold my hand?" The whole time. That was a lie, actually. Beverly knew the protocol. She would be expected to walk 20 feet behind the Alpha King and his son, carrying supplies, staying out of sight. She was staff. She didn't get to hold the heir's hand in public, but she'd break every rule in the pack if it meant Kieran felt safe. By 10 o'clock, the Citadel courtyard was organized chaos. 50 royal guards in their formal black armor stood in precise formation, their faces hidden behind obsidian helmets. Beta Wayne Norris, Santiago's second-in-command and head of security, barked orders with military efficiency. The man was built like a tank, all muscle and scars, with the kind of voice that made even alphas flinch. "Perimeter check complete," one guard shouted. "Sensors clear," another confirmed. "Route secured." Wayne turned to Santiago, who stood at the center of the courtyard, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. The Alpha King wore ceremonial leathers, black and silver, as the traditional colors of the Ironwood pack, and his face was carved from granite. "We're ready, Alpha," Wayne said. "The village square is packed. 300 pack members confirmed attendance. The council will meet us there." Santiago nodded, his jaw tight. Then his eyes found his son. Kieran stood beside Beverly, partially hidden behind her leg, dressed in a miniature version of his father's ceremonial outfit. He looked terrified. Something flickered across Santiago's face. Grief, maybe, or regret, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by the cold mask he wore like armor. "Let's go," Santiago said. The procession began. Santiago walked at the front, flanked by 2 guards. Behind him, Kieran walked alone, small and vulnerable in the center of the formation. Behind Kieran, at exactly 20 feet as protocol demanded, Beverly walked with her head down, carrying a supply pack. She hated this, hated that Kieran was alone, hated that she couldn't reach him, and hated the way his small shoulders were hunched with anxiety. But she kept walking. The path from the Citadel to the village square wound through the forest, a carefully maintained road that was wide enough for the full procession. The guards maintained perfect formation. Everything was controlled. Everything was safe. Everything was a lie. They were halfway to the village when Beverly smelled it. It was faint, barely there, easily missed by anyone who wasn't paying attention. Yes, but Beverly had learned to pay attention. When you were at the bottom of the hierarchy, when you were prey instead of predator, you developed instincts that went beyond your wolf. She smelled wrong. Not danger, exactly, but displacement. The subtle shift in the air that meant something didn't belong. Beverly's eyes scanned the tree line. The royal guards were focused outward, watching for threats from beyond the formation. None of them were looking up. Beverly looked up and saw the glint of metal in the branches. 7 figures, dressed in white camouflage that blended perfectly with the early autumn sky. 7 compound bows, already drawn. 7 arrows, each one tipped with something that gleamed silver in the morning light. All of them aimed at Kieran. Beverly didn't think. Thinking would have meant calculating the distance, 20 feet. Thinking would have meant acknowledging that even if she ran, and even if she moved with every ounce of speed her weak Omega wolf could provide, she would never reach him in time. Thinking would have meant accepting that Kieran was about to die. So Beverly didn't think. She moved. Later, the guards would describe what happened next in confused, contradictory reports. Some said she ran. Some said she flew. Some said she seemed to blur, like reality itself glitched to accommodate the impossible distance she needed to cross. And all of them agreed on one thing: it shouldn't have been possible. Beverly launched herself forward with a speed that defied her Omega status, her weak wolf, her small frame. 20 feet evaporated in less than a second. She hit Kieran with her full body weight, wrapping herself around him as they tumbled forward. The air hissed. The first arrow hit her left shoulder blade, punching through flesh and muscle with a dull, meaty thud that Beverly felt more than heard. No pain yet, just impact. The second arrow hit her right shoulder, the force of it spinning her body so she could shield Kieran more completely. The third hit her lower back, on the left side, puncturing her kidney. The fourth hit her right side, cracking a rib. The fifth hit her upper back, narrowly missing her spine. The sixth hit her lower shoulder, so close to her neck that she felt the arrowhead scrape against bone. And the seventh arrow hit her directly in the center of her chest, and it punched through her sternum with a crack Beverly heard inside her own skull. She felt it pierce her heart, felt the silver tip slide through the ventricle like a knife through butter, felt her heart stutter, trying to beat around the foreign object now embedded in its core. Beverly collapsed over Kieran, her body acting as a human shield, curled around him to make herself as wide as possible. "Stay down," she rasped, her mouth filling with blood. "Don't move." Kieran was shaking beneath her, and his eyes wide with terror. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Beverly could hear chaos erupting around them. The guards were shouting. Wayne was roaring orders. But it all sounded far away, muffled, like she was underwater. She looked up, her vision blurring, and saw them emerging from the trees. The assassins. 7 of them, moving with military precision, already reloading their bows. "Check the target," one of them growled. Beverly tried to shift, and tried to call on her wolf to fight, to rip these men apart, to do something. But her wolf was silent, distant, dying. The silver from the arrowheads wasn't just poisoning her, it was burning her from the inside out, cauterizing the wounds even as it spread through her veins like liquid fire. "I'm going to die here," Beverly realized with perfect clarity. "I'm just an Omega. No one is coming for me." But she tightened her grip on Kieran anyway. "Close your eyes, baby," she whispered, her voice wet and gurgling. "Don't look." One of the assassins stepped closer, drawing a knife. "The girl's in the way. Move her." Beverly bared her teeth, human teeth, useless against a shifter. But she would bite his throat out as a human if she had to. She would die protecting this child. But then the ground shook. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a roar. A sound so primal, so full of murderous rage, that Beverly felt it in her bones even as her bones were breaking. Santiago. The Alpha King erupted from the formation in his full shifted form. A massive black wolf the size of a grizzly bear, eyes blazing gold with fury Beverly had never seen before. He didn't attack the assassins. He annihilated them. The first assassin didn't even have time to turn before Santiago's jaws closed around his spine, snapping it with a sound like breaking timber. The second tried to run. Santiago caught him mid-stride, tearing through him with claws that could shred steel. But the remaining 5 scattered, firing arrows wildly. But Santiago moved like violence incarnate. He was a king. He was a father. And someone had tried to kill his son. There would be no mercy. Within 30 seconds, it was over. 7 bodies lay scattered across the forest floor, their white camouflage now stained red. The royal guards had finally mobilized, surrounding the area, but there was nothing left for them to do. Wayne stood at the perimeter, his face pale, he already barking orders into his comm unit. Santiago shifted back to human form, naked from the waist up, steam rising from his skin in the cool morning air. He was breathing hard, covered in blood that wasn't his own, his eyes still glowing feral gold. "Kieran!" he roared, scanning the carnage. "Dad!" The word was so quiet, barely a whisper, but it stopped Santiago cold. It was the first time Kieran had called him that in 3 years. Not father, not alpha, Dad. And Santiago spun and saw the small heap near the overturned supply pack. He saw his son, covered in blood, crawling out from beneath a body. Not his body. Beverly's. Kieran was shaking, tears streaming down his face, pointing back at the figure in the dirt. "Bev!" The boy wept, his voice cracking. "Bev won't wake up!" Santiago fell to his knees. He grabbed Beverly's shoulder to turn her over, and then he froze. He saw her back. 7 arrows, fletched in black, protruding from her flesh like a grotesque bouquet. The dirt beneath her wasn't brown anymore. It was dark red, spreading in a pool that was far too large for someone her size to lose and still be alive. The smell of wolfsbane was overwhelming, acrid and chemical. "Healer!" Santiago screamed, a sound of pure panic that cracked his kingly facade. "Get Toby! Now!" He gathered Beverly into his arms. She was limp, her skin already turning a terrifying shade of gray. Her head lolled back, and her eyes half open, glazed and unfocused. 7 arrows, 7 silver-tipped wolfsbane-laced arrows meant for his son, all of them buried in the back of a girl whose name he'd never bothered to learn. "You saved him," Santiago whispered, his voice breaking in a way it hadn't since his mate died. "You saved Kieran." Beverly's eyes drifted, struggling to focus. Her lips moved. "Did I get him?" she breathed, blood bubbling at the corner of her mouth. Is Kieran safe?" "He's safe," Santiago choked out, pressing his hand against the wound on her neck, ignoring the burn of the wolfsbane against his own skin. "He's safe, Beverly. Stay with me. Just stay with me." "Okay," she breathed. And then her eyes rolled back, and she went limp in his arms. The Pack Hospital was a state-of-the-art facility built into the mountainside, equipped to handle everything from routine births to traumatic combat injuries. It had never seen anything like this. Yet as Santiago kicked the emergency room doors open, still carrying Beverly's limp body, her blood soaking through his ceremonial leathers. "Clear the room!" Dr. Toby Herman shouted. Toby was the Pack's head healer, a man in his 60s with hands that had saved more lives than anyone could count. But when he saw the arrows, when he smelled the concentration of wolfsbane, his weathered face went pale. "Wolfsbane toxicity," Toby said, already moving, already working. "Stage 5. This is Alpha. This is catastrophic. Get the antidote. Get the silver extraction kit. Move!" Nurses and junior healers swarmed. They cut away Beverly's blood-soaked uniform. The sight underneath made several of them gasp. The silver hadn't just pierced her flesh. It had burned it. The entry wounds were blackened, charred, the skin around each arrow looking like it had been seared with a brand. But it was the 7th arrow that made Toby's hands freeze. It protruded from the center of her chest, it embedded so deeply that he could see the shaft moving with the sluggish, failing rhythm of her heartbeat. "Dear gods," Toby whispered. "It's in her heart." "Get it out," Santiago demanded, his voice shaking. "Alpha, if I remove it, she dies instantly. The only thing keeping her heart pumping is the arrow itself. It's—" Toby's voice cracked. "It's lodged in the left ventricle. The silver is touching the muscle directly, by every law of medicine and nature, and she should already be dead." "Then how is she alive?" Santiago roared. "I don't know," Toby shot back. "But she won't be for much longer. I need you out of this room. Your presence is raising everyone's stress levels, and we need steady hands." Santiago wanted to argue, wanted to command, wanted to use his alpha authority to force the universe to save this girl who had saved his son. But Wayne appeared at his side, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "Let them work." "Oh, brother," Wayne said quietly. "Come. Kieran needs you." Santiago looked at Beverly one last time, small and broken on the table, surrounded by healers desperately trying to pull her back from death, and forced himself to leave. He found Kieran in the waiting area, wrapped in a shock blanket, sitting with Nadine Bird, one of the senior nursery staff. The moment Kieran saw his father, he launched himself into Santiago's arms. Santiago caught him, held him, and for the first time in 3 years, let himself feel. "She made a wall, Dad," Kieran sobbed into his father's chest. "She made herself a wall." Santiago closed his eyes, holding his son tighter than he ever had. "I know," he whispered. "I know she did." News spread through the pack link like wildfire. The Alpha King's arms attacked, and Omega took 7 arrows. She's dying. By nightfall, the hospital waiting room was packed. Not just with high-ranking wolves, not just with the Royal Guard or the Council, but with the invisible members of the pack, the cleaners, the cooks, the gardeners, the laundry staff, the people Beverly belonged to. They stood in silent vigil, these forgotten wolves, waiting for news about one of their own who had done the impossible. Wayne found Santiago in the hallway outside the ICU. The beta looked grim. "We identified the assassins," Wayne said, keeping his voice low. "Mercenaries from the southern territories. No pack markings. Professional killers. All on the nanny." Santiago's eyes flashed on the nanny. Santiago's eyes flashed gold. "Is that all she is to you? The nanny?" Wayne took a step back, surprised by the defensive vehemence in his alpha's tone. "I just meant, she took 7 arrows, Santiago. 7. Silver and wolfsbane. A warrior would have passed out after 3. An alpha would have gone down after 4. A that." Santiago stood up, pacing the that. Santiago stood up, pacing the sterile corridor. "Why? Why would she do that? We pay her minimum wage. Most of the pack doesn't even know her name. She owes us nothing." "Loyalty," Wayne suggested. "Love," a soft voice said. They both turned. Nadine Bird stood there, her eyes red from crying. "She loves that boy, Alpha," Nadine continued. "You. She didn't do it for the crown. She didn't do it for the crown. She did it for him." At 11:43 p.m., 17 hours after the attack, the emergency room doors finally opened. Dr. Toby Herman walked out. He looked like he'd aged a decade. His surgical scrubs were soaked with blood and sweat. He pulled his cap off with trembling hands. The entire corridor fell silent, and Santiago stepped forward. "Well?" Toby leaned against the wall, his legs seeming barely able to hold him. "I removed 6 arrows," he said. "I flushed the wolfsbane from her system. I repaired the damage to her organs as best I could. But the 7th arrow," He swallowed hard. It's still in her heart, Alpha. I can't remove it. The moment I try, she'll hemorrhage and die within seconds. So she has an arrow in her heart, Santiago said slowly. Forever? For however long she has left, Toby confirmed. Which brings me to the next problem. She died, Santiago. The hallway erupted in gasps and cries. What do you mean she died? Santiago demanded. 47 minutes ago, her heart stopped. Completely. We tried everything. Chest compressions, defibrillator, nothing worked. I called time of death at 11:50 p.m. But you said you removed the arrows, Wayne interjected. You said you flushed the poison. I did, Toby said. After she came back. Silence. What? Santiago breathed. At 11:54 p.m., 4 minutes after I called her death, her body began to glow. Not a metaphor. She actually glowed, violet light, starting from the arrow in her heart and spreading through her entire circulatory system. It was... Toby's voice shook. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. He pulled out his tablet, showing them a photograph. Beverly lay on the operating table, her chest split open, and there, invisible through her translucent skin, was her heart. It was glowing violet, pulsing with otherworldly light. The arrow began to dissolve, Toby continued. The silver turned into liquid light that her heart absorbed, and then her heart restarted. But it's not beating red anymore, Alpha. Look. He pulled up a live feed from the ICU. Through the cameras, they could see Beverly in her hospital bed, hooked up to a dozen machines. And there, visible through her skin, it was the faint violet glow of her heart, pulsing with each beat. What is she? Wayne whispered. I don't know, Toby admitted. But she's alive, stable even, and she's asking for Kieran. Santiago walked into the ICU room alone. Beverly lay in the bed, looking impossibly small beneath the white sheets. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped a steady rhythm. But her eyes were open, aware, and glowing faintly violet. Alpha King, she rasped, trying to sit up. Yo, don't, Santiago said quickly, moving to her bedside. Don't move. You have 17 broken bones, 6 repaired organs, and an arrow still in your heart. Beverly blinked. An arrow in my... What? The 7th one. It fused to your heart tissue. Toby says removing it would kill you. Beverly processed this with surprising calm. Then her eyes widened. Kieran? Is he... He's fine. Perfect. Not a scratch. Because of you. Beverly sagged back against the pillows, tears spilling down her cheeks. Good. That's good. Santiago pulled a chair up to her bedside. He sat down heavily, this king who had forgotten how to be human, and looked at the Omega who had saved his world. Why? He asked simply. Why what? Why did you do it? Why did you move? You were 20 feet away. You couldn't have known you'd make it in time. You couldn't have known you'd survive. Why risk your life? Beverly looked at him with those strange, glowing eyes. Because he's everything, she said simply. No, and I was nothing. Santiago flinched like she'd struck him. Never say that again. The alpha command in his voice was involuntary, making the machines spike and the room vibrate. You are the savior of my son, Santiago said, his voice rough with emotion. You are the reason the Ironwood Pack still has an heir. You are far from nothing, Beverly Hull. Far from it. Beverly smiled weakly. You knew my last name. I should have known it years ago, Santiago admitted. I should have known everything about the woman raising my son. I was lost. After Liana died, I just shut down. But you brought him back. You kept him safe. You loved him when I forgot how. He's easy to love, Beverly whispered. She tried to reach for her inner wolf then, that small, quiet presence she'd lived with her whole life. But there was nothing there. Not sleeping. Not quiet. Gone. The mental space where her wolf had lived was a scorched, empty cavern. Awe was too severe. Your wolf went into what was too severe. Your wolf went into what he calls comatose hibernation. She's not dead, but she's not reachable. You're essentially human now. A sob broke from Beverly's throat. An Omega without a wolf was the lowest creature in the pack. Beneath even the humans who served as staff. She was useless now. Worthless. Hey! Santiago leaned in, his golden eyes forcing hers to meet them. Look at me. You don't need a wolf to be strong. I saw what you did out there. That was all you, Beverly. That was your heart. Your courage. Your love. And as long as I draw breath, you will never be considered useless in this pack again. His proximity was overwhelming. Beverly had never been this close to the Alpha King, had never had his full attention, had certainly never had him look at her like she mattered. And then she smelled it. Not just his scent, pine, musk, and the sharp tang of power. It was something else underneath, something that made her newly sensitive nose wrinkle. You smell guilty, Beverly murmured, her eyes drooping with exhaustion and pain medication. And scared. You're terrified. Santiago froze. What? Guilt, Beverly mumbled, her consciousness fading. You feel guilty. And you're afraid. Of what? I don't... She drifted off, her breathing evening out into sleep. Santiago slowly pulled his hand back, staring at her in shock. Dr. Toby had been standing in the doorway. Now he entered, checking Beverly's vitals. She can smell emotions, Toby whispered. That's legend. Only the ancient seers could do that. The bloodlines that predated the modern pack structures. What is she, Toby? Santiago asked not for the first time that night. I don't know, the healer admitted. But whatever that violet light did to her, it changed her, enhanced her. She's not just an Omega anymore, Santiago. She's something we haven't seen in centuries. Keep this quiet, Santiago ordered. If the council learns she's an anomaly, they'll demand she be put down before we understand what she is. Toby nodded grimly. They're already demanding answers. Lord Hubert is calling for an emergency session tomorrow. He's saying you're neglecting your duties by staying here. Santiago's jaw tightened. Let him call. I'm not leaving her until she's stable. But as he sat back down in the chair, keeping his vigil, Santiago knew that the real battle was just beginning. Someone had tried to kill his son, and Beverly, in saving Kieran, had revealed herself to be something extraordinary, something dangerous, something the pack might not accept. 3 days passed. 72 hours during which the Ironwood pack felt less like a community and more like a powder keg waiting for a spark. Though Santiago didn't leave the hospital wing. He showered in the staff facilities, ate the food Nadine brought him, and spent every waking moment either with Kieran or sitting vigil beside Beverly's bed. Kieran refused to leave either. The boy had a cot set up in Beverly's room and spent his days drawing, always drawing, the same image over and over with increasing detail. Beverly in midair, 7 arrows converging on her body, and wings, massive translucent wings made of violet light, and spreading from her back. She had wings, Kieran insisted to anyone who would listen. The arrows went through the wings first. That's why she lived. The pack didn't know what to make of it. A child's trauma-fueled imagination? Or had something impossible happened in those moments? The medical staff had no answers. All they knew was that Beverly Hull had died and come back. And now her heart glowed violet in the dark. Meanwhile, in the war room of the Citadel, the council was fracturing. He's neglecting the borders! Lord Hubert Carroll roared, slamming his fist on the ancient stone table. Hubert was Santiago's uncle, an old wolf who had challenged Santiago's father decades ago and lost. He was scarred, gray, and deeply traditional in his views about pack hierarchy. "We have rogues probing the northern perimeter," Hubert continued, glaring around the table at the other 11 council members. "We have an assassination attempt that proves our security is compromised. And our king is playing nursemaid to a floor scrubber." "She saved his son, Hubert," Wayne argued, though the beta looked exhausted from managing both the pack and the investigation. "She did her duty." "Omegas are expendable," Hubert countered coldly. "Alphas are not. If she dies, we mourn and move on. Santiago is acting like he's lost a mate, not a servant." That word hung in the air. Mate. Wayne's eyes narrowed. "Careful, Hubert." "I'm simply stating what everyone is thinking," Hubert said, to looking around the table for support. Several of the older council members nodded. "Santiago has been different since the girl woke up. He's obsessed. It's unnatural." "Maybe," said a smooth voice from the end of the table. "He's finally feeling something again. Isn't that what we wanted?" All eyes turned to Faye Parks. Faye was a high-ranking female beta, beautiful and ambitious, with ice-blonde hair and calculating blue eyes. She'd made it clear for years that she intended to be Santiago's next mate, going so far as to position herself at every pack function, every meeting, every opportunity to be in his presence. The fact that Santiago had barely looked at her in 3 years hadn't dimmed her determination. Until now. Now, Santiago hadn't left the hospital in 3 days. And it wasn't for Faye. "What are you suggesting, Faye?" Hubert asked carefully. "I'm suggesting that our Alpha King is compromised," Faye said, and her voice silky. "And when an Alpha is compromised, the pack suffers. We need to call for a vote of no confidence." The room erupted in arguments. Wayne stood up, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You want to challenge Santiago's authority? Now? While we have assassins in our territory and an active investigation?" "I want," Faye said coldly, "to save this pack from a king who has lost his mind over an Omega." Up in the hospital, Beverly was unaware of the political machinations brewing. It should have killed her, but somehow should have killed her, but somehow sustained her instead. Her wolf was gone. That loss hurt worse than any physical wound. But strangest of all were the smells. Beverly had always had a decent sense of smell, but now it was overwhelming. She could smell emotions like they were physical things. Fear smelled like ozone before a storm, and anger smelled like hot metal. Love smelled like honey and sunlight. And she could smell something else, something that made her skin prickle with unease. Intent. She could smell when someone was planning to act. A split second before they moved, she could smell their decision crystallizing, like frost forming on glass. It was how she knew, 2 seconds before it happened, that one of the nurses was about to drop a tray of surgical instruments. "Catch it!" Beverly gasped. At the nurse, a young Omega named Riley, fumbled but managed to grab the tray before it crashed. "How did you know?" Riley breathed. "I smelled it," Beverly said weakly. Dr. Toby, who'd been checking her vitals, went very still. "What did you smell?" "Decision. Action. I don't know how to describe it. It's like I can smell the future. Just a second or two ahead, but..." Toby's hands shook as he made notes on his tablet. "This shouldn't be possible." "Doctor," Beverly said quietly. What am I?" Before Toby could answer, the hospital room door burst open. Wayne strode in, his face grim. "Alpha, we have a problem." Santiago looked up from where he'd been sitting with Kieran, reading him a story. "What kind of problem?" "The kind where the council is calling for your head," Wayne said. "Emergency session, noon tomorrow. They're demanding you appear before them, or they're calling a vote of no confidence." Santiago's eyes flashed gold. "A coup. They're actually attempting a coup." "While his son was traumatized," Wayne confirmed. while our savior is dying. Yes. I'm not dying, Beverly interjected weakly. I'm just modified. Both men turned to her. Wayne's eyes widened as he saw the faint violet glow emanating from beneath her skin. By all the gods, he whispered. What are you? That, Santiago said, standing up, is exactly what we're going to find out. And when we do, if the council is going to understand that Beverly Hull is not some disposable Omega, she's the future of this pack. The next morning, Santiago made a decision that would change everything. You're coming with me, he told Beverly as Toby helped her into a wheelchair. Alpha, I can't, Beverly protested, still weak from her ordeal. An Omega in the Grand Hall during a council session? It's forbidden. They'll... Let them try, Santiago said grimly, pushing her wheelchair toward the door. Yet you are the evidence. You are the witness. And if your new abilities are what Toby suspects, you might be the only one who can tell me who the traitor is. Because that was the other problem. Wayne's investigation had revealed that the assassination was funded by an account linked to someone inside the inner circle. Someone in the council. Someone in Santiago's own house had tried to kill his son. They just didn't know who. An hour later, the heavy oak doors of the Grand Hall swung open. The 12 members of the council sat around the massive circular stone table, their faces ranging from annoyed to outraged. The air was thick with tension, and the scent of powerful, angry wolves. When Santiago entered, pushing Beverly in a wheelchair with Kieran walking beside them holding her hand, the room exploded. This is an outrage! Lord Hubert slammed his fist on the table. You bring an Omega and a child into the war room? Have you lost your mind? This! Santiago roared, and his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling and silencing the room instantly. Took the arrows meant for my son. While you sat here debating budgets, she was bleeding out in the dirt to save the future of this pack. She has more right to be here than any of you. He pushed Beverly's wheelchair to the head of the table, placing it next to his throne. He sat Kieran on his lap. It was a tableau of defiance. A king, his heir, and the lowly Omega who bridged the gap between them. Beverly felt sick. It could smell every emotion in the room, Lord Hubert smelled like rotting wood and stubborn pride. Anger, but honest anger. Next to him, Elder Robert Case smelled like chalk dust and anxiety. He was just scared of conflict. Councilwoman Miranda Coffey smelled like peppermint and calculation. Ambitious, but not malicious. But then Beverly's nose found something that made her stomach turn. It was coming from the other side of the table. A scent so sharp, so vile, it made her gag. It smelled like sulfur and sickly sweet perfume. It smelled like pure, unadulterated hatred. And underneath it all, the faint metallic tang of silver. The same silver from the arrows. Beverly's gaze locked onto Faye Parks. Faye sat perfectly still, her hands folded on the table, watching Beverly with cold, calculating eyes. And she was smiling, a small, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. We are here to discuss the security breach, Lord Hubert demanded, glaring at Santiago. Not to parade your charity case. The breach was an inside job, Santiago said calmly, dropping the bombshell. The assassins were paid by someone in this room. Chaos erupted. Growls and shouts of denial filled the air. Beverly gripped the armrests of her wheelchair. The smells were overwhelming. Fear, outrage, confusion. But cutting through it all was that vile scent from Faye. It was intensifying. The smell of someone who had been caught. A bold accusation, Santiago, Faye said, her voice smooth as silk. Do you have proof, or are you just listening to the pillow talk of your servant? The insult was designed to degrade Beverly, to reduce her sacrifice to something sordid. Beverly's vision blurred. The violet glow beneath her skin intensified. The smell coming off Faye was unmistakable now. It was the smell of the person who had ordered the hit. "It's her," Beverly whispered. Santiago leaned down. "What?" Beverly raised a trembling finger, pointing directly across the table. The entire room went silent. "It's her," Beverly said, her voice gaining strength, vibrating with a strange resonance that made the air shimmer. "Faye Parks. She smells like the arrows." Faye laughed, but it sounded brittle. "The Omega is delirious with painkillers." "Oh, this is absurd." "Is it?" Santiago said slowly, beginning to walk around the table toward Faye. His movements were predatory. "Because my beta found encrypted payments on the assassin's phones, payments that trace back to a shell company." He stopped behind Faye's chair. "And that company," Santiago growled, leaning down to whisper in her ear, "is registered in your dead brother's name." Faye's composure cracked. In a blur of motion, she shoved her chair back, slamming it into Santiago. And she didn't shift. It would take too long. Instead, she pulled a sleek silver-plated dagger from her boot. But she didn't aim for Santiago. She lunged across the table, straight for Beverly. "If I can't have the crown," Faye shrieked, her face contorting into a mask of madness, "no one will, especially not this abomination." Beverly couldn't move. The wheelchair trapped her. She watched the silver blade descending toward her chest, paralyzing fear washing over her. But before the blade could connect, a small body threw itself in front of her. Kieran. The dagger was inches from the boy's face. Time seemed to warp. Santiago was moving, a roar tearing from his throat. But he was too far away. He was an alpha, the fastest creature in the territory. But physics was cruel. He wasn't going to make it. Beverly watched the blade descend toward Kieran's throat, and something inside her snapped. It wasn't the fear of death. She'd already made peace with that in the dirt. It was the absolute blinding refusal to let this child be harmed again. Not him. Never him. The thought wasn't words. It was a command. A shockwave. Deep in her marrow, where the seventh arrow had fused with her heart, where the silver had melted into her blood, the violet energy exploded. Beverly didn't shift into a wolf. She didn't have a wolf anymore. She screamed. It was a sound that shattered every window in the grand hall. A pulse of pure, translucent violet light erupted from her body, centered on her glowing heart. It hit Kieran first, not hurting him but wrapping him in a shimmering cocoon of protection. Then it hit Faye. The beta was thrown backward as if struck by a freight train. She flew across the massive stone table, crashed into the far wall with a bone-crunching impact, and crumpled to the floor. The silver dagger clattered uselessly to the ground, bent 90 degrees by the force of the blast. And the room fell into stunned, ringing silence. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light coming through the broken windows. Beverly slumped forward in her wheelchair, gasping for air. Her veins were glowing, visible beneath her skin, pulsing with a terrifying alien rhythm. Santiago was at her side in a heartbeat. He didn't look at Faye. He knew his guards were already swarming her. He looked at Beverly, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and reverence. "What was that?" he breathed, and hovering his hands over her, afraid to touch. Kieran poked his head up from where the violet light had gently deposited him behind Beverly's wheelchair. "The purple wall," he whispered, his eyes huge. She did it again. Dr. Toby rushed forward, grabbing Beverly's wrist to check her pulse. His face went ashen. "Alpha," Toby said, his voice trembling. "Look at her eyes." Beverly lifted her head. Her eyes, usually soft brown, were now a piercing, glowing violet. The pupils were vertical slits like a predator's, but the irises swirled like nebulae. "I remember," Beverly whispered, her voice echoing slightly as if two people were speaking at once. "I remember what I am." "What are you?" Santiago asked, falling to his knees before her, ignoring the council members watching in horror. "I am Argenti," Beverly said, the word heavy and ancient on her tongue. A silver blood. A collective gasp went through the room. Lord Hubert stood up, his chair scraping loudly. Impossible. The Argenti were myths. The silver blood lineage was hunted to extinction 300 years ago. Not all of them, Beverly said, her strength fading as the glow dimmed. My mother. She hid me. She bound my wolf to keep me safe. Made me Omega so no one would look twice. That's why I was weak. The seal. The arrows broke the seal. She looked at Santiago, tears finally spilling over her violet-tinged cheeks. Oh, the silver didn't kill me because it belongs to me, she whispered. It is part of my blood. Part of my birthright. I am the last of the Argenti line. Santiago stared at the woman he had ignored for years. She wasn't a lower caste servant. She was the descendant of the most powerful lineage in werewolf history. Wolves who could weaponize silver, the very thing that destroyed normal wolves. Wolves who were so powerful, so dangerous, and that the ancient alphas had hunted them to extinction out of fear. And one of them had been living in his house, raising his son, for 2 years. Faye. Santiago's voice shifted from awe to thunder. He stood, turning to the corner where guards held the would-be assassin. Faye was bleeding from her head, dazed, but she looked at Beverly with pure venom. A silver blood, she spat. A freak, an abomination. You should have let me kill it, Santiago. Oh, she saved my son. Twice. You tried to. She saved my son. Twice. You tried to murder a child, your own future king. He straightened, addressing the room with alpha authority that made every wolf present bow their heads involuntarily. Take her to the cells. She faces the alpha's judgment at dawn. And may the moon have mercy on her soul, because I will not. As they dragged the screaming Faye away, and Santiago returned to Beverly. He scooped her up from the wheelchair, cradling her against his chest with infinite gentleness. The meeting is adjourned, he declared to the stunned council. I have to take my mate home. The word hung in the air. Mate. Beverly rested her head against his shoulder, exhaustion claiming her. I'm not your mate, she murmured sleepily. I'm just the nanny. We'll argue about that later, Santiago said, his voice soft now, meant only for her. Sleep now, you're my silver queen. As he carried her out of the grand hall, the council members sat in stunned silence. Everything had changed. The lowly Omega was royalty, and the king had just claimed her. 2 weeks passed. 14 days during which the Ironwood Pack underwent a transformation that no one could have predicted. Beverly recovered with a speed that defied medical explanation. The wounds from the 6 removed arrows healed within days, leaving only faint silver scars that traced across her back like a constellation. The 7th arrow, still embedded in her heart, had become part of her. She could feel it pulsing with each beat, and no longer a foreign object, but a core of power that sustained her. Her eyes remained violet, though the intensity faded to a softer lavender when she was calm. The glow only returned when her emotions spiked, or when she used her abilities, and those abilities were growing stronger. She could smell intent up to 5 seconds before someone acted. She could detect lies. They smelled like rotting flowers and copper. And most unsettling of all, she could smell death approaching. And anyone within 24 hours of dying carried the scent of frost and silence. It was this last ability that saved Elder Robert Case's life, when Beverly smelled his impending heart attack 3 hours before it happened, giving Toby time to intervene. The pack didn't know what to make of her. Santiago had moved her into the royal wing, giving her a suite of rooms adjacent to his own. The message was clear, and even if he hadn't formally declared it, Beverly Hall was under the Alpha King's personal protection, but protection and acceptance were 2 different things. The morning after Faye's execution, a swift, brutal affair witnessed by the full council, Santiago made an announcement that split the pack down the middle. He stood on the Citadel balcony, overlooking the assembled pack in the courtyard below. Hundreds of wolves looked up at their king, waiting. Beverly stood beside him, dressed in simple clothes that couldn't hide the silver scars visible on her arms, her violet eyes scanning the crowd nervously. "Members of the Ironwood Pack," Santiago's voice boomed, amplified by the natural acoustics of the stone courtyard. "2 weeks ago, someone tried to destroy our future. They tried to kill my son, your heir. And in that moment, when trained warriors froze, when protocols failed, one wolf moved." He gestured to Beverly. Beverly Hull took 7 arrows meant for Kieran. She died protecting him. And in death, she revealed herself to be something we thought was legend. She is Argenti, silver blood, the last of an ancient and powerful lineage. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Today," Santiago continued, his voice firm, "I declare Beverly Hull my chosen Luna. She will stand at my side as queen of this pack. She will be mother to my son and protector of our people." The reaction was immediate and violent. Half the crowd erupted in cheers. The Omegas, the servants, the forgotten wolves who saw one of their own rising to impossible heights. The other half stood silent, their faces carved from stone. And then, slowly, deliberately, they turned their backs. 300 wolves, warriors, hunters, trackers. The military force that protected the borders, they turned their backs on their king. Captain Israel Cox, leader of the Royal Guard, stepped forward. He was a massive wolf, scarred from decades of combat, but respected by every fighter in the territory. "We will not bow to a wolf who cannot shift," Israel declared, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "We will not follow a Luna who cannot fight. If she is your mate, Alpha King, you are no longer our Alpha King." He threw his ceremonial blade at Santiago's feet. It clattered against the stone with a sound like a death knell. "We leave at sunset," Israel continued. "Now any who wish to follow true strength may come with us." The 300 warriors walked away, leaving Santiago standing alone on the balcony, his chosen mate trembling beside him, and his pack fragmenting before his eyes. That night, Santiago found Beverly in her room, staring out the window at the warriors' camp below. They'd set up tents in the valley, a temporary settlement, while they prepared to leave the territory entirely. "They're right," Beverly said quietly. "I can't shift." "And arrows and survived," he said fiercely. "Arrows and survived," he said fiercely. "You blasted a beta across a stone room with pure energy. You can smell death itself. Don't tell me you can't fight." "But I don't have a wolf," Beverly whispered, the loss still raw. "Then we'll prove you don't need one." "How?" Santiago's eyes gleamed with something dangerous. "The gauntlet." Beverly's breath caught. The gauntlet was an ancient pack ritual, a test of worthiness consisting of 3 challenges. It hadn't been invoked in over 50 years. "Santiago, I'll fail. The challenges are designed for warriors." "The challenges," Santiago corrected, "are designed to test combat, strategy, and sacrifice. You've already proven the 3rd. Let's see about the other 2. 3 days later, the entire pack assembled in the ancient amphitheater carved into the mountainside. This time, if there were no celebrations, no coronations, just a trial. Beverly stood in the center of the fighting pit, a circular arena of packed dirt surrounded by tiered stone seats. Above her, thousands of wolves watched in silence. Across from her stood Captain Israel Cox, who had volunteered to serve as her opponent for the first challenge: combat. The rules were simple: no weapons, shifting allowed, first blood wins. Israel was 7 feet of pure muscle, with a wolf form the size of a truck, as Beverly was 5'4" and wolfless. "I don't want to hurt you, girl," Israel said, not unkindly. "Yield now, and you can walk away with dignity." Beverly looked up at the stands, finding Kieran sitting with Santiago. The boy gave her a thumbs up, complete faith shining in his eyes. She looked back at Israel. "No," she said simply. Israel sighed. Then he shifted. His transformation was instantaneous, a blur of fur and muscle that left a massive gray wolf standing where the man had been. But he was beautiful and terrifying, all power and predatory grace. Beverly remained human, small, fragile, wolfless. The fight lasted 4 seconds. Israel lunged, a move designed to intimidate more than harm, expecting Beverly to dodge or flee. Instead, she stepped into the attack. Her hands shot up, catching his jaws. Her small human hands gripping his fangs, stopping his momentum completely. The crowd gasped. Beverly's hands began to glow violet. Not burning, absorbing, like she could feel Israel's wolf through the connection. His strength, his pride, his confusion. And beneath it all, his wolf's instinctive recognition of what she was. Predator recognizing apex predator. "You're an alpha," Beverly said calmly, her voice resonating with otherworldly authority. "Your wolf is strong, but I don't need to fight your wolf. I need to show your wolf who I am." The violet light intensified. Israel's eyes widened in his wolf form, and then something impossible happened. His wolf submitted, not to Beverly the Omega, not to Beverly the servant, to Beverly the Argenti, the silver blood, the ancient power that predated modern pack hierarchies. Israel shifted back to human form without meaning to, the transition forced by his wolf's involuntary submission. He dropped to his knees before Beverly, gasping. "Forgive me, Luna," he whispered, baring his throat. "Your dominance is absolute." Beverly released him, stumbling back, the violet glow fading from her hands. Yet she hadn't fought him, hadn't hurt him. She'd simply made his wolf remember what the Argenti were. The amphitheater erupted in shocked murmurs. "Challenge 1 complete," the officiator announced, his voice trembling. "The Luna has demonstrated combat prowess through dominance display, a valid victory under the ancient laws." Beverly swayed, exhausted from the energy expenditure. But she remained standing. 2 challenges left. Challenge 2 was strategy. The council presented Beverly with a theoretical scenario. A rogue pack of 50 wolves was threatening the northern border. She had only 30 warriors available. How would she defend the territory? Beverly stared at the tactical map they'd laid out, her mind racing. This was impossible. She'd never had military training. She'd been a nursery worker. But then she smelled it. The faint scent of deception coming from the scenario itself. "This is a trick question," Beverly said slowly. "A packs of 50. That's an organized force, packs of 50. That's an organized force, which means they have a leader, resources, and a goal. This isn't a random attack. This is an invasion." She leaned over the map, her violet eyes scanning the terrain. "You don't defend against an invasion with 30 warriors. You prevent it with intelligence. I would send scouts to identify the rogues' staging area, infiltrate their command structure, and eliminate the alpha leading them. Cut off the head, the body dies." She looked up at the council. "And if that failed, I would evacuate the civilians from the northern villages, fall back to the Citadel's natural choke points, and send runners to our allied packs for reinforcement. You don't fight an unwinnable battle. You change the battlefield." Silence. And then Elder Robert Case began to clap slowly. "That," he said, "is the first intelligent answer I've heard to that scenario in 30 years. Most candidates try to answer with warrior tactics. You answered like a queen." "Challenge 2 complete," the officiator announced. "The Luna has demonstrated strategic thinking." 1 challenge left. Challenge 3 was sacrifice. This one was simpler and more brutal. The candidate had to give up something of value to prove they understood the cost of leadership. Traditionally, warriors gave up their weapons. Betas gave up their rank. Alphas gave up their pride. What could Beverly give up? She had no weapons, no rank, no pride left to lose. The officiator looked at her expectantly. Beverly thought of the 7 arrows, thought of dying and coming back, thought of Kieran's face as she'd covered him with her body. I already gave my sacrifice, Beverly said quietly. I gave my wolf, my ability to shift, to run with the pack, to feel that connection. I gave my humanity when I died and came back as something other. I gave my anonymity, my safety, my simple life. She met the officiator's eyes. I gave everything I was to save one child, and I would do it again. That is my sacrifice. That is what leadership costs. Everything. The amphitheater was silent as a tomb. Then from the stands, and voices rose in a wolf song that shook the voices rose in a wolf song that shook the mountains. It was the song of recognition, an ancient tradition reserved for warriors who proved themselves in battle. They were singing it for an Omega, for their queen. The officiator's voice was thick with emotion. Challenge 3 complete. Beverly Hull has passed the gauntlet. She is recognized as Luna of the Ironwood Pack. Captain Israel Cox stepped forward, retrieving his ceremonial blade from where he'd thrown it days before. He walked to Beverly and knelt before her. My blade is yours, Luna, he said, offering the weapon. My loyalty is yours. My warriors are yours. We were wrong to doubt you. Beverly took the blade with trembling hands. I don't need your blade, Captain, she said softly. I need your trust. Can you give me that? Israel looked up at her, this small woman with violet eyes, who had brought a warrior to his knees without violence. You have it, Luna, now and always. That night, Santiago found Beverly on the balcony of her suite, staring up at the stars. You did it, he said, coming to stand beside her. You won them over. I won their respect, Beverly corrected. But I don't know if I can be what they need. What you need. Santiago was quiet for a long moment. 3 years ago, I lost my mate, he said finally. Liana died in a car accident, and a part of me died with her. I shut down, became a ghost, forgot how to be anything but a king. He turned to face Beverly. And then you saved my son. You died for him. And in saving him, you saved me too. You reminded me what it means to love something more than duty. Santiago. I'm not saying this because you're Argenti, he interrupted. I'm not saying this because you passed the gauntlet. I'm saying this because when I thought I'd lost you in that operating room, when Toby called your death, I begged whatever gods were listening to take me instead. Because a world without you in it felt wrong. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Beverly's breath caught. I never asked, Santiago said, his voice rough with emotion. I commanded, I declared, I moved you into my wing, announced you as Luna, acted like a king. But I forgot to act like a man who's falling in love. He opened the box, revealing a ring. It wasn't a traditional diamond. It was a band of woven white gold, intricate and ancient in design, resembling twisted roots. In the center sat a raw, unpolished amethyst that seemed to pulse with inner light, the exact shade of Beverly's violet eyes. This was my grandmother's, Santiago explained. She was a seer. She told me once that I would marry a woman who could walk through fire. Hull. I don't want you to be my Luna, Hull. I don't want you to be my Luna because of politics. I don't want you because you're a silver blood weapon. I want you because when you're not in the room, the world loses its color. I'm asking you to be my equal, my partner, my mate. Will you accept the bond? Beverly looked at this man, this king, who had barely known she existed 2 weeks ago, who was now looking at her like she held the stars in her hands. She thought of Kieran's smile, thought of the pack's howling recognition, thought of the impossible journey from invisible Omega to this moment. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I'll accept the bond." Santiago slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, warming instantly against her skin. And then the door burst open. Kieran stood there in his pajamas, holding his latest drawing. "Are you kissing?" the boy asked, wrinkling his nose. And Santiago laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. He scooped his son up in one arm, pulling Beverly close with the other. "We were about to," he said. "But you interrupted. Again." Kieran grinned, wrapping his arms around both of them. "Good," he declared, "'cause Nadine said if Bev leaves, you'll probably break all the furniture again." "Nadine talks too much," Santiago muttered, but he was smiling. Beverly kissed the boy's cheek, breathing in his innocent puppy scent, and feeling the rightness of this moment. "I'm not going anywhere, little wolf," she promised. "Not ever." 6 weeks later, autumn had fully claimed the mountains. The harsh grip of summer heat had given way to crisp mornings and the smell of falling leaves. The Ironwood pack prepared for the coronation with a fervor that bordered on religious. This wasn't just a ceremony. This was a statement. The Omega had risen. The outcast had become queen. And the pack would bear witness to her transformation. Beverly stood before the floor-length mirror in the master suite, Santiago's suite, which was now their suite, examining herself. The physical wounds had healed completely. Even the scars from the 6 removed arrows had faded to faint silver lines that caught the light like spider silk. But they were still visible, and the coronation gown had been designed to show them. The dress was a masterpiece created by the pack's finest seamstress. At midnight blue silk that shimmered like water under moonlight, it fitted her body perfectly. The front was high-necked and modest, elegant and regal. But the back was entirely open, dipping low to her waist. No mesh, no lace, no illusion fabric. Just skin. And scars. The silver lines traced across her back in a pattern that looked almost deliberate. A constellation of sacrifice. "Stop staring at them," Santiago's voice rumbled from the doorway. Beverly turned. At her mate, still strange to think that word, stood there in his formal ceremonial attire, black leathers and furs, the ancient symbols of the Ironwood pack embroidered in silver thread across his chest. "I'm not staring," Beverly lied. "I'm assessing." "They're beautiful," Santiago said, crossing the room. He traced one of the scars with gentle fingers, making Beverly shiver. "Every mark is a testament to your courage." "Half the pack still whispers that I'm too weak to be Luna," Beverly murmured. "That I'm too damaged." "Then tonight," Santiago said, turning her to face him, "we show them that damage and strength are not opposites. We show them that your scars are your crown." The coronation was to take place in the same ancient amphitheater where Beverly had completed the gauntlet. But tonight, it had been transformed. Thousands of candles lined the stone tiers. Silver streamers hung from the ancient pillars. The full moon hung low in the sky, as if the moon goddess herself had come to witness this moment. 3,000 wolves packed the amphitheater, every member of the Ironwood pack and representatives from allied territories who had come to see the legendary silver blood. Beverly waited in the preparation chamber, her heart pounding. Nadine fussed with her hair, weaving silver thread through the dark strands. "You look like a queen," Nadine said, her eyes misty. "I feel like an imposter," Beverly admitted. "I'm good," came Kieran's voice. The boy appeared in the doorway, dressed in his own formal outfit. He crossed to Beverly and took her hand. "Mom always said that if you're not a little scared, you're not paying attention," Kieran said seriously. Beverly's throat tightened. This was the first time Kieran had mentioned his mother without pain in his voice. "Your mother was wise," Beverly said softly. "She was," Kieran agreed. "But she's gone, and you're here, And Dad says that the moon sometimes gives us what we need instead of what we want. He hugged her fiercely. I needed you, Bev. And I'm really glad the moon sent you. Beverly blinked back tears, not wanting to ruin the careful makeup Nadine had applied. I'm glad too, little wolf. A knock at the door. Wayne poked his head in. It's time, Luna. The walk from the preparation chamber to the amphitheater center felt like miles. The path was lined with the royal guard, each warrior standing at attention with their swords raised, creating a tunnel of steel. Beverly walked alone, as tradition demanded. Santiago waited for her at the center, standing on a raised dais of white stone. Every step felt weighted with significance. Every eye was on her. And then she entered the torchlight, and the amphitheater fell into absolute silence. They saw the dress, saw the elegant front, and then, as she passed, they saw her back. The scars. 7 of them were silver against her pale skin, visible proof of the arrows she'd taken. Beverly heard the sharp intakes of breath, heard the whispered prayers. But she kept her chin high, her shoulders back. She wasn't hiding anymore. As she passed the front row where the council sat, she met Lord Hubert's eyes. The old wolf who had called her a charity case now stared at her back with something like wonder. Slowly he lowered his head in a bow, not a full submission, but an acknowledgement of her strength. But Beverly ascended the stone steps to the dais. Santiago reached out his hand, and she took it. His grip was iron strong, anchoring her. You took their breath away, he whispered. I just walked, she replied, her heart pounding. Santiago turned to address the assembled pack, his voice booming through the natural acoustics of the stone bowl. Citizens of the Ironwood Pack, tonight is not just a coronation. It is a reckoning. He paced the dais, still holding Beverly's hand. For generations, but we have measured strength in muscle, in violence, in the ability to kill. We have valued warriors and dismissed those who serve in quieter ways. He gestured to Beverly. This woman stood where warriors froze. She shielded the future of this pack with her own body. She carries the marks of her loyalty carved into her flesh. And she carries the blood of the ancients, the Argenti line thought lost to history. A ripple of unease went through the crowd. The Argenti were legend, but they were also feared. Dr. Toby! Santiago called out. The old healer stepped forward, carrying a golden chalice encrusted with rubies. This was the traditional mating ceremony vessel, used for the blood mixing that would bind Luna and Alpha as mates. Usually it was symbolic, a drop from each, drunk by the other, to share scent and essence. Tonight would be different. We do not just share a title, Santiago announced. We share a soul. He drew a ceremonial obsidian blade from his belt and sliced his own palm without flinching. His blood, thick and dark red, dripped into the chalice. Then he turned to Beverly. She held out her hand, trusting him completely. Santiago made the cut quickly, a sharp sting across her palm. Her blood welled up. It wasn't purely red. Under the torchlight, it had an iridescent sheen, catching the light like oil on water. She held her hand over the chalice, letting her blood fall. Drip, drip, drip. The moment her blood touched Santiago's in the golden cup, the air changed. It started with a low hum, a vibration that everyone felt in their teeth. The liquid in the chalice began to bubble, then boil. Santiago, Beverly started, pulling back. Don't, he said, his eyes wide, fixed on the cup. Look! A beam of light shot straight up from the chalice. Not fire, not smoke, pure energy. A column of blinding silver-violet light that pierced the night sky, it reaching up toward the full moon like a bridge between earth and heaven. The crowd screamed, scrambling back. But the light didn't burn. It expanded, washing over Santiago and Beverly, lifting their hair, making their clothes billow as if in a storm. Beverly felt a sudden, violent snap in her chest. The bond. But it wasn't the soft, warm tether she'd heard about in stories. This was a steel cable slamming into place, forged in silver and sealed with ancient power. How she gasped as her mind was suddenly flooded with him. She could feel Santiago's heartbeat, steady and strong. She could feel his immense power, his love for Kieran, his protective rage, his adoration for her. It was all pouring into her like water into a vessel. And he could feel her fear and determination, feel her love for his son, feel the violet fire in her blood, the remnant of the seventh arrow still pulsing in her heart. And Santiago threw his head back and roared, not in pain, but in ecstasy. The power of the Argenti silver blood was feeding his alpha spirit, amplifying it 1,000 times over. His eyes began to glow, not just gold, but gold rimmed with violet fire. The pillar of light exploded outward in a shockwave of silver mist that washed over the entire amphitheater. Every wolf in the stands was hit by it. They didn't fall. They didn't scream. They shifted. Without command. Without pain. Single wolf in the pack now had a faint silver ring around their iris. The Argenti blood hadn't just bonded Beverly and Santiago. It had touched the entire pack. Beverly clung to Santiago as the energy slowly faded to a gentle glow. She looked out at the sea of wolves, and all of them staring at her with those silver-rimmed eyes. "What did we do?" she gasped. Santiago looked at his hands, then at the pack. He looked at Beverly with something approaching worship. "We didn't just mate, Beverly," he said, his voice echoing with dual resonance, human and wolf. "We evolved." He stepped to the edge of the dais, raising his hand. The howling stopped instantly. "The Silver Line is reborn," Santiago shouted. "We are no longer just the Ironwood Pack. Oh, we are the Argenti Guard. And we will bow to no one but the moon herself." The roar that answered him shook the mountains. But high above the amphitheater, on a ridgeline shrouded in darkness, someone else was watching. The figure stood hidden in the tree line, dressed in tactical black, with no pack markings. Through high-tech thermal binoculars, he had watched it all. The coronation, the blood mixing, the pillar of silver light that defied physics, and the transformation of 3,000 wolves. He pressed a finger to the calm earpiece in his ear. "Status," a distorted voice crackled. "Confirmed," the spy said, his voice emotionless. "The catalyst is active. The experiment worked better than projected. The Omega didn't just survive the arrows. She assimilated the silver, and the Alpha bonded to her. The amplification effect has spread to the entire pack. We're looking at an army of enhanced wolves. Sir." There was a long pause on the line, then a cold chuckle. "Excellent, let them celebrate their evolution. They have no idea the silver in her blood is a beacon." "Orders, sir?" "Initiate Phase 2, the voice commanded. "Activate the subjects. Let's see how the Silver Queen handles monsters of her own making." The spy clicked off the radio. He pulled a tablet from his tactical vest and entered a code. In the amphitheater below, no one noticed when 20 pack members, scattered throughout the crowd, suddenly went rigid. Their eyes rolled back, showing only whites. When their eyes returned, they were no longer brown or green or blue. They were violet. But not Beverly's gentle violet. This was a screaming electric violet that pulsed with wrong energy. The 20 infected wolves turned, in perfect unison, toward Beverly on the dais, and shifted. But they didn't become wolves. They became something else. The transformations were grotesque. Their bodies contorted, bones breaking and reforming, but wrong. Their skeletons pushed through their skin, coating themselves in liquid silver that hardened into armor. Their jaws unhinged like snakes, revealing rows of crystalline teeth. Their howls were mechanical screams that hurt to hear. They were chimeras, twisted amalgamations of wolf, flesh, and weaponized silver. Beverly's blood hadn't just awakened her power, it had awakened the curse, to the same curse that had destroyed the Argenti line 300 years ago, when the silver blood turned against itself and created monsters. Kieran started screaming. Santiago's eyes blazed gold-violet as he shifted into his alpha form, placing himself between the chimeras and his family. But there were 20 of them, and they were fast. The amphitheater erupted into chaos. Wolves scrambled to escape. Warriors shifted to fight. But the chimeras were stronger, faster, wrong, and one of them leaped toward the dais, its silver-coated claws extended toward Kieran. Beverly didn't think. She stepped forward, and the violet energy exploded from her heart. But this time, it was controlled, focused. A wall of translucent violet light erupted between the chimera and Kieran, so solid that the creature bounced off it with a metallic shriek. "Santiago!" Beverly shouted over the chaos. "Get Kieran out of here! I'm not leaving you! You have to!" Beverly's eyes were blazing violet now, the power building in her chest around the 7th arrow. "I can feel them. They're connected to me, to my blood. This is my fault. I have to stop it." Another chimera lunged. Beverly threw her hand out, and a spear of violet light shot from her palm, piercing the creature's chest. It shrieked and dissolved into silver mist. But there were 19 more, and Beverly could feel them now, feel the twisted connection, feel how her blood had called to something dormant in theirs, something ancient and corrupt. She'd saved the pack, and doomed them. Santiago grabbed Kieran, pulling him close. "We fight together," he growled. "No," Beverly said, her voice resonating with power. "You survive. That's an order. Luna to Alpha. You survive, or everything I did was for nothing." Their eyes met. The bond between them thrummed with desperate emotion. "Oh, I love you," Beverly said. "Then don't you dare die," Santiago commanded, the Alpha authority making her bones vibrate. "That's an order. Alpha to Luna." And then the sky tore open. It wasn't metaphorical. The air above the amphitheater ripped like fabric being shredded, revealing something beyond. Through the tear, Beverly saw a realm of silver mist and violet storms. And in that realm, 7 figures stood, tall, ethereal, radiating impossible power. The 7 primes, the original Argenti. "Now, daughter of the silver line," one spoke, her voice echoing across dimensions, freezing every chimera in place. "You have awakened the bloodline, but awakening comes with responsibility." The 7 primes descended through the tear, their forms becoming more solid as they entered the mortal realm. They were beautiful and terrible, ancient wolves in humanoid form, their eyes pure violet, their skin marked with silver tattoos that moved like living things. At the leader, a female with hair like spun moonlight, looked at Beverly with something like pity. "The 7 arrows that struck you created 7 debts," she said. "The silver in your blood called to the curse we sealed away centuries ago. The chimera infection, our failure, our shame." "I don't understand," Beverly gasped, still holding the violet wall against the frozen chimeras. "The Argenti line was destroyed because we became too powerful," the Prime explained. We tried to merge with silver completely, to transcend our wolf nature. But the silver corrupted us, turned us into monsters. We sealed the curse away, but your blood, infused with 7 arrows worth of concentrated silver, has broken the seal." She gestured to the 20 chimeras. "These are just the first," the Prime said. "Your coronation, your blood mixing with an Alpha King, sent out a pulse of silver energy. It infected anyone in your pack with latent Argenti heritage, bloodlines so diluted they didn't know they carried it." "How many?" Santiago demanded, still holding Kieran. The Prime's face was grave. "Our scans detect approximately 2,000 pack members with the dormant gene. All of them are now ticking time bombs. The curse will activate in 7 days, and when it does, your entire pack will become chimeras. Horror washed through Beverly. No, there has to be a way to stop it. There is, the Prime said. 7 impossible tasks, and 7 trials to prove you are worthy of wielding Argenti power without corruption. Complete them all in 7 days, and we will give you the knowledge to cure the curse. And if I fail, the silver in your blood will consume you from the inside out, the Prime said flatly. You will die screaming, and your death will collapse the bloodline forever, turning every infected wolf into a permanent chimera. 2,000 monsters unleashed on the world. The weight of it crushed Beverly. That she'd saved 1 child and potentially doomed 2,000 wolves. What are the trials? She whispered. The Prime raised her hand, and 7 crystalline markers appeared, floating in the air. Trial of blood. Defeat a chimera without killing it. They'll prove mercy is stronger than violence. Trial of mind. Solve the labyrinth of memories without losing yourself. Trial of spirit. Face the beast of your deepest fear. Trial of sacrifice. Give up what you treasure most. Trial of truth. Speak the words that will destroy you. Trial of redemption. Save someone who has tried to kill you. Trial of ascension. Choose between power and love. Each trial marker pulsed with ominous light. You have 7 days, the Prime said. I'm starting now. The portal began to close. Wait, Beverly cried. How do I even start? Where do I— You'll know, the Prime said, already fading. The trials will find you. They always do. The portal snapped shut. The chimeras, released from their stasis, resumed their attack. But Beverly was ready now. She wasn't fighting to protect herself anymore. She was fighting to save 2,000 lives. The violet energy exploded from her heart. It wielded with intent. But Beverly knew this was a test of her strength. She had to prove herself worthy of the Argenti power. She had to show the chimeras that she was not a weakling. She had to show them that she was a warrior. She had to show them that she was a leader. She had to show them that she was a queen. She had to show them that she was a goddess. She had to show them that she was a force to be reckoned with. She had to show them that she was a warrior. She had to show them that she was a leader. She had to show them that she was a queen. She had to show them that she was a goddess. She had to show them that she was a force to be reckoned with. She had to show them that she was a warrior. She had to show them that she was a leader. She had to show them that she was a queen. She had to show them that she was a goddess. She had to show them that she was a force to be reckoned with. She had to show them that she was a warrior. She had to show them that she was a leader. She had to show them that she was a queen. She had to show them that she was a goddess. She had to show them that she was a force to be reckoned with. She had to show them that she was a warrior. She had to show them that she was a leader. She had to show them that she was a queen. She had to show them that she was a goddess. She had to show them that she was a force to be reckoned with. She had to show them that she was a warrior. She had to show them that she was a leader. She had to show them that she was a queen. She had to show them that she was a goddess. She had to show them that she was a force to be reckoned with. She had to show them that she was a warrior. She had to show them that she was a leader. She had to show them that she was a queen. She had to show them that she was a goddess. She had to show them that she was a force to be reckoned with. She had to show them that she was a warrior. She had to show them that she was a leader. She had to show them that she was a queen. She had to show them that she was a goddess. She had to show them that she was a force to be reckoned with. She had to show them that she was a warrior. She had to show them that she was a leader. She had to show them that she was a queen. She had to show them that she was a goddess. She had to show them that she was a force to be reckoned with. She had to show them that she was a warrior. She had to show them that she wielded with intent. But Beverly knew this was only a temporary victory. Somewhere in the pack, 2,000 wolves were carrying a curse that would activate in 7 days, and she had 7 trials to complete before then. The clock was ticking. On the ridge above the amphitheater, the spy watched Beverly collapse from exhaustion, watched Santiago rush to catch her, watched the pack slowly realize what had just happened. He pressed his comm unit again. Phase 2 partially successful, he reported. 20 subjects activated and neutralized. The Argenti primes intervened. They've given her the trial framework. Excellent, the distorted voice said. She'll be so focused on the trials she won't see Phase 3 coming. What is Phase 3, sir? There was a long pause, and then, wake her mother. The spy's blood ran cold. Sir, the report said Elisa Payne died in St. I know what the report said, the voice interrupted. I wrote them. Elisa Payne, last surviving Argenti elder, sealed herself away 23 years ago to hide her daughter. It's time she learned what her sacrifice created. And if Elisa refuses to cooperate? Then remind her that her daughter has 7 days to live, and only Mother knows the secret of the 7th trial, the one the primes won't tell her about. The trial of bloodline. Exactly. Let's see if Beverly Hull can face the truth about what her mother did to make her safe. Let's see if she can handle the price that was paid. The spy clicked off the radio. He looked down one last time at Beverly, unconscious in Santiago's arms, surrounded by her pack, glowing faintly violet even in her exhaustion. Enjoy your victory, Silver Queen, he whispered. Oh, tomorrow, the nightmare truly begins. He melted into the darkness, leaving only the sound of wind through the pines. And somewhere, deep beneath a forgotten mountain, in a silver cage that hadn't been opened in 23 years, a woman's eyes snapped open. Eyes the exact shade of violet as her daughter's. Elisa Payne was awake, and she was coming. Beverly Hull had gone from Invisible Omega to Silver Queen in 6 weeks. She'd taken 7 arrows and died. And she'd come back with impossible powers. She'd passed the gauntlet and won the pack's loyalty. She'd bonded with an Alpha King and upgraded an entire pack. But now she faced her greatest challenge. 7 trials in 7 days. 2,000 lives hanging in the balance. And a mother she thought was dead, who held secrets that could destroy everything. The Argenti Chronicles had only just begun. And that is how Beverly Hull went from Invisible Omega to the most dangerous weapon in werewolf history. 7 arrows, 7 minutes dead, 7 trials, 7 days. The math is brutal. She saved 1 pup, but her blood infected thousands. She became a queen, but triggered a curse. She found love, but brought war. But here's the question the Ironwood Pack, no, the Argenti Guard, is asking. If you had to choose between saving 1 innocent child and potentially dooming your entire species, why, what would you do? Because Beverly didn't get a choice. She just acted on love. And now everyone has to live or die with the consequences. That cliffhanger, though, the 7 primes, the curse activation in 7 days, 2,000 wolves about to transform into chimeras. Beverly's dead mother is alive and in a cage, and there's a mysterious organization pulling strings from the shadows. If you want to see trial number 1, the trial of blood, where Beverly has to defeat a chimera without killing it, and proving that mercy can conquer violence even against a monster, you need to tell me. Smash that like if this story had you shook. Drop a comment with your theory. Is Beverly's mother a victim or a villain? What did she do to make Beverly safe that was so terrible? And subscribe because the Ironwood Saga just became the Argenti Chronicles, and I promise you, Episode 2 is going to break your heart in ways you're not ready for. Beverly Hull has 7 days to save 2,000 lives. And the clock is ticking, tick-tock.